Okay, it's 7 o'clock. I'll call this meeting of the Urbana Bicycle and Pedestrian Advisory Commission to order. Could we have a roll call?
Bill Brown,
Here.
Jeannie Adams, here, Kara Dudek, Cynthia Hoyle,
Yes, I'm here.
Audrey Shee,
Here.
Susan Jones,
Present.
Steph Maria, Bruce Michelson,
Here.
Sartak Prasad,
Here.
Nancy Westcott,
Here.
John Zenith.
Here. Thank you. We have a quorum. Are there any additions to the agenda? Or changes? We do have one change. The new business number A will be delayed till next month, you think? Till June. Okay. So you can take that one off. Nothing else? Do we need to reapprove the agenda with that deletion or no? I don't think so. Okay. So approval of minutes from the previous meetings from April. Did everybody get a chance to look at those?
I had one minor change.
Okay.
I had one minor change. And I think we corrected it during the meeting, but it didn't come up in the minutes, that I had been appointed a Bike Illinois State Board member. I've been a board member for like 6 years. I was elected president of Ride Illinois.
Bravo. Okay, so with that correction, could we have a motion for approval?
So moved.
I'll second it.
Moved by Bruce and seconded by Audrey. Any further discussion or corrections? If not, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That motion carries. The minutes are approved.
So much faster, we don't have to do roll call.
Yeah. And Kara is here now.
Yes.
So public input. I don't see any public for input, so we can skip that. Unfinished business. We have BPAC goals for 2023. I think we're going to keep that on there as unfinished business. But so one thing that was, John reminded me that was unfinished about it was that Annie had mentioned she was going to do an Airtable. Have you done anything on that yet?
I have not done anything about that yet. Nope.
Okay.
Sorry. Yeah, the school year ending. It's been nuts.
Okay. Then the other thing we could do with that is to try to prioritize those a little bit and maybe look through them again and decide which ones we're going to approach at upcoming meetings, and people can volunteer to give us an update on that particular goal or where it's at. So do you want me to bring that up on the screen and we could go through them a little bit? Okay. I guess that's the only one that has it, right? Okay, so these are the approved goals and they are on the website. Thank you for getting them on the website. Let's see. There. Oops. Okay, so we had research and planning, evaluation and response, culture, communication, equity, and applications. So in research and planning, Sartak and I were going to look at technological options for improved pedestrian lighting at critical locations. Vision Zero Action Plan, increase understanding the process for police reported crash data and open data source updates. I was kind of hoping to get something done on that this month, but probably not this month, maybe next month. City planning policy and ordinances. And then evaluation and response, Plan review with focus on BPAC discussion topics and initiatives. Yeah. Coordinate with partner agencies and ask for annual updates. Provide input to staff and city council on existing council goals related to walking and cycling. That sounds like that's sort of an ongoing one. Improve existing city culture to better represent the nature of a bicycle pedestrian friendly city. Assist local businesses in bicycle friendly business application process. Determine continuing education opportunities for commissioners such as workshops. And equity, probably the EQL project will be getting something pretty soon again. Do you know, John?
I think my expectation is next month we'd have an update again, but I'm not sure.
That's kind of what I remember.
Mm-hmm.
So we might keep that one in mind for next month. And then BPAC partners, that was Nancy. If anybody that is signed up for these has a particular month they want to schedule, you might mention that too. Like if you're kind of looking ahead and planning your work, when you'd have time to attack some of this. ITEP grant, that will be determined by the grant timeline probably, and that probably is late summer. I don't think they've really announced that yet, last I heard. And renewal of bicycle friendly gold, that's another one that last I heard they still hadn't given us a timeline on that. And funding for Vision Zero, and that was it, right? Yeah. So next month equity. Well, I'll go ahead and say, let's see, I think I have on I think August or September I could try to give a review of the pedestrian lighting. Are you going to be around this summer?
I'm going to be here. September is going to be the bike week thing, so we'll be pretty busy with that.
Okay, that's true.
Yeah, so August, September would be pretty busy with bike week and some like school resuming. Might be busy.
All right, let's shoot for October.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So Sartak and I will shoot for October for that one. How about the e-bike stuff, Bruce? Have you looked at that at all much yet?
I haven't moved ahead at all. This is just a free-floating anxiety I had about the thing last time.
And I've noticed a lot of...
What I suggested we could do, and I could try to step forward on this, is see what kind of action is being taken by the public sphere in areas where e-bikes are a much stronger presence than they are here yet. I was thinking of certain West Coast cities.
I don't think is your microphone on?
No, it isn't, I guess.
I'm sorry.
Oh, it is. I was going to look at Davis, Seattle, San Francisco, Bay Area cities where seem to be an awful lot of electric bikes and scooters around, and see whether or not there's any response to it, constructive response to it going on, whether anybody knows what to do yet.
Okay.
It'll be,
And Illinois law might be a little different than other states, so if you could even do a little research on Illinois law.
Illinois
know.
law classifies e-bikes in 3 groups.
I know the ones that, the new ones that you can rent on campus.
They're class 2.
They're class 2, and
Mhm.
they have a sign on them, so do not ride on sidewalks.
Mm-hmm.
I'm a little confused about if that means multi-use paths too.
You can use them on multi-use pass, although the university has a whole, they say they're not allowed there, but then they don't mark which are multi-use paths and which are sidewalks. I ride my e-bike on the multi-use pass on campus all the time.
But is yours a class 2?
No, but they also say e-bikes are not allowed.
Ah.
That's my understanding.
I
Isn't
don't
that
think
what?
so. I think those are mostly for VO.
Right,
Okay.
but
I
is there
think
not
so.
an ordinance that says e-bikes are not allowed?
Rental, maybe. I'm not sure. I'll have to look into that. I'll have to look into that. But as far as I know, they can, multi-use paths should be fine.
Okay, so it
Yeah.
sounds like there's enough
Well, the
confusion
campus,
there.
Yeah,
the
there-
campus has
yeah.
its own
We
rules.
could definitely use an
Yeah.
update on that.
Yeah, campus has its own rules.
And scooters, Cynthia, what are they?
For
Electric
You mean
scooters?
this ones you stand on?
Yeah, that can go 20 miles an hour.
The state might have something on that. But I think the thing to do is to research micromobility. And Chicago did a very thorough research of the scooters, and they found that they were serving a needed gap in transportation for low-income neighborhoods to get access to transit and other
Mhm.
nearby services. And so they renewed the contract for them and allowed them to expand them in Chicago.
Actual city rentals, yeah, okay.
Yes,
All right.
yes. There's our, oh, Annie, what's the bike share up there? Now my brain went blank.
Divvy
bike,
divide and
yeah.
share.
And I think Divvy does their scooters too,
Uh,
but I'm not absolutely sure. But there is
Okay.
a study if you Google it.
Okay, I'll look for it.
And there's also been quite a bit of research on scooters as well in terms of
Yeah.
safety concerns.
Yeah, and also Chicago did a great job with their scooters, really
Mhm.
focusing on equity in that last mile
Yes.
and the type of users
Yes.
that it's really helpful for
Yep.
people that don't own cars and are not
Mhm.
under 16 and so on and so
Mhm.
forth.
Yeah, and I
Yeah.
think the main thing they've done is that they can program in a maximum speed on them
Oh, okay,
of 8 to 10 miles an hour, and that makes a difference too.
all right.
There are some places where they've taken them out of circulation because there were too many intoxicated people using them.
All right.
Yeah. Well, and it was also, yeah, they're also like easy to steal, they're easy to, but people love them. I mean, people love riding them. It's very
Mhm,
disappointing
mhm.
that the university doesn't allow them. I had my bike in the shop and I had a hard time because I wanted to try to use them, but I couldn't park on campus. So I had to walk and walk and walk till I found one of the e-bikes, and e-bikes are amazing. But I'd also like to say about e-bikes, what I'm trying to find here is Deborah Liu was going to do a bike rodeo. She was going to have bikes brought down from Chicago by a company where,
Cargo bikes.
yeah, cargo bikes. And so I was trying to
Electric
find that
assist ones.
information, but I can't. And the other thing I'd like to add is in probably, I suppose, in a year and a half, when the full 24.5-mile trail from Urbana all the way out to Kickapoo, out to the Kickapoo Park opens, e-bikes are going to be, I think we're going to see a massive boom in our community because they're
Mhm.
going to be so nice to ride all the way out there and back.
Well, we're still apparently at sea about where to park them, how fast they can go, what stretches of concrete and asphalt they're legal on. Those things are all loose gerbils at this point.
They have a maximum speed on the ones
Okay.
on campus. The ones you see going faster are privately owned.
Yeah, and there's gonna be more and more of
And the
those.
class 3 ones can go up to 28 miles an hour. And those are the ones that really should be on the street.
Mhm.
And I think that the Illinois state law doesn't allow them on sidewalks or bike infrastructure. I think
class
they are
2
supposed to
either.
be using the street.
Mhm, mhm. But
So-
am I correct in thinking that these laws have not been regularized, promulgated, or understood yet? Right. That when you go buy a scooter, you're pretty much on your own to figure out.
I think they tell
Wouldn't be
you,
really.
because there's some, because once you get up to a certain point on a scooter, you have to have a license.
Yeah, I mean, I was a scooter owner.
For a whole giant range of
Yeah.
vehicles now.
Yeah, I had a
This
cutest
is going to be a
little-
great topic, but it's not
Yeah.
on the agenda yet.
Yep.
So let's.
Because
Yeah.
I had a Honda Spree, and I had to get it, I had to do all sorts of stuff to do that. And so
Yeah,
the
it's
types of scooters
confusing.
I think we're talking about are different, so, yeah.
I understand that. The word scooter covers a multitude of
And it's
senses.
confusing.
So,
It's very confusing.
Yeah.
I-
So people
will-
that have
I will
ideas
pursue
for
this.
sources and research, send them to Bruce, and maybe next month he can just kind of let us know what he has and what he's looking for, and then maybe later in the summer, give us a little overview of the things we should be looking at as far as regulations, if any, and maybe find out from like the Forest Preserve if they have plans to regulate them on the
Well,
rail
right now,
trail-
the e-bikes
rail
won't
trail.
function that far out. I think that they're geo-fenced after a certain point.
The ones you
that-
can rent, yeah.
Yeah, the rental ones, I think they'll shut down.
No, they'll keep going. They're geo-fenced, but they won't stop. I mean, they'll say, like, so I've ridden them out, like, I rode it to Carl in the fields where they're not supposed to be technically, but it's just fine. And they even said that in their presentation, because we were saying,
Okay.
one of the reasons at the very beginning when we said, are the wheels just gonna lock up and you're gonna throw
No,
someone
but
off the
the
bike?
power could shut off.
Yeah, I think the power would shut off.
And on the
because-
Class 2 bikes, that would
Yeah.
be a hindrance.
Yeah, but they were saying they didn't. I mean, when they talked about it, they said basically you're just gonna be told you weren't supposed to, which is what happened to me. They were like, you're not supposed to be riding an e-bike out to Carl in the fields, which is
Just-
ridiculous.
just got a
Okay.
naughty message.
Okay,
just
that's
one
enough on
confirm-
e-bikes.
Is Carl at the field in Savoy or is it still
Right,
Champagne.
Monticello is
Okay.
way-
Okay,
I
think
don't
we
know.
have,
Okay.
we have
Alright.
kind of a plan.
I would just
Oh,
ask,
and-
anybody who gets inspired about where I should look can send me an email, okay? I'll compile that, that'll give me some clues.
It's an
as-
Just-
exciting topic.
Just FYI, this for the scooters with the university, I can say like we are not allowing them on campus yet. At this time, like we are not. And there was one more thing I was going to say. Oh, I understand people talk about multimodal stuff and with scooters, and I understand that it provides another mode,
Mhm.
but it's not an active mode of transportation. So,
That's not what Active Trans found.
sorry?
That's not what the research shows. So,
That's, okay, sure.
This is gonna be
Okay,
fun.
thanks,
But anyway.
thanks for that
yeah.
discussion. Okay, the other goal, so that goal, and then we have the EQL goal coming up this month. So I think we have kind of a plan for next month, but I suggest that people that want to work on these goals go through them again, and next month decide when it's a good time to help with your part that you volunteered for.
All right, one caution, I'm gonna be out of the country on foot from the middle of next week through June 13th. So if you try to reach me, I'm not gonna be communicating, I'm gonna be
Okay, but you can,
pedestrianizing with a vengeance. So I may be a little slow catching up with you, but if you send me an email, I'll.
that's fine. Yeah, let's just send Bruce any emails if you have suggestions on this topic, and
and while he's gone out of the country, he'll work on it.
if he's got time before the next meeting, he'll give us an update.
I will
Cogitate.
try.
Okay, I think that covers the goals part.
Bill, one question. Have you guys looked into walk-friendly community stuff?
Yes. I've
Okay.
suggested we apply.
Okay, just wanted to.
It hasn't
because-
happened.
Yeah.
The reason before was that we didn't have a pedestrian plan. Now we have a pedestrian plan.
I didn't know that.
Okay, yeah, I was looking at.
So we could
wa-
apply.
I mean, I knew we had
Yeah,
a plan.
I was looking for the university, but they don't have a walk-friendly university at all. You can only apply
Oh,
for
okay.
communities. That's
That's
why then we
true.
went for walk audit
Yeah.
and,
It's not as robust a program.
yeah.
That's true. And there aren't very many of them.
Should that be added to the goals? Should that proposal be added to the goals?
Add what to the goals?
Be a walk, to apply to be a walk-friendly
Oh,
community.
to apply to be a walk-friendly community?
You might want to do that in 2023 since they're going to be reapplying for a bicycle-friendly community. That's a pretty big job.
Maybe next year.
Yeah, I think it's a goal that should be pursued.
Okay, we'll look into that. Okay, next is reports of city officials, staff, and committees. Any staff report?
Sure, I'll give some updates. All right, so let's see. Well, last night, for everybody who tuned in, we had Public Works and Executive presented the draft capital improvement plan. And so if you are interested to see what we've got in our capital improvement plan as a draft version, you can see the documents that were on the committee of the whole meeting last night. And we can also share a link with everybody to where the CIP is there, and it's in draft form right now to be finalized by June 30th. For the bike-friendly application update, got word back from RPC. They were able to collect bike counts at 7 of the 8 targeted locations prior to the end of the UIUC spring semester. They did miss one because of so much rain. They just didn't quite get to it, but got most of what they shot for. And they, like you said, Bill, they haven't, the LAB hasn't released a revised application yet. They're expected to in late May. So,
Okay.
and they'll have an educational webinar about the new application when that comes out. Let's see. On the city's website, the bike registration information got updated, and so we can share that with the group as well. We have a Register Your Bike City of Urbana webpage. So I'm going to share that with you. Let's see. I'll just share that I'll be absent next meeting, but Kat Trotta will serve as my proxy and will do a better job than me. I can say that Tim, Public Works Director Tim, and I met with some folks from IDOT back on April 27th to talk about the East University Avenue project. They let us know that IDOT will publicly release their program for that stretch of road with their multi-year program. That'll come out in July or August. They just talked with us a little bit about it to get a little more input from us and just kind of talk through some of their options they were looking at, what they'd found. And that will all become public, but they did ask that we keep that discussion confidential until the release. And so I just wanted to share my personal opinion. I think that BPAC, I'd recommend we wait to see what those plans are when they were released before BPAC issues a statement. But that's just my opinion.
So why do you think that, John?
Um,
Why do you think it would be better to wait?
because I think it would be good for the group to see what their actual plans are, and then you can comment on those directly.
So you don't think if we gave them comments beforehand, it will have any influence on their plans at this point?
Correct, and that doesn't mean that they're rigid and set in stone. That's what they will build. But at this point, they're building that multi-year plan for release to the public. So that document's kind of going out there already. But they are going to continue public involvement once that plan gets released.
Okay.
And that's all I got.
And, so in the multi-year plan, how detailed is that? Does it get down to the level of how many lanes there's going to be, or is it just more, this is how much money we're going to spend, it's going to be a resurfacing?
It's analogous, much bigger scale, but it's analogous to what our capital improvement plan tries to do. So ours is like a 5-year plan, theirs is a 6-year plan. And it will be, kind of that level of detail. We're going to do, for example, like the previous stretch of University Avenue that they just finished, they would probably say, however many miles of resurfacing with a multi-use path, new signals. They'd kind of hit on the highlights of what's contained in it, but not enough that would feel like a paragraph. That's kind of what I would expect. And then fiscal year budget, maybe the budget, stuff like that.
Okay. Any questions for John?
Can I ask a question about Florida Avenue?
Sure.
Yeah.
So I'd been asking my neighbors if they'd filled out the survey, because I saw like new little signs had come up. And all my neighbors said I already filled out the survey, and so I don't think they understood that there was a plan that had been in place. Because I'd been so busy, I was unable to put out on the community listserv my feedback on the plans. So I will be doing that this week. It's my understanding that and I know like a lot of my neighbors were in the same boat. They just didn't have any time to either look at the plans or give feedback. There's a couple of hot button issues as well that they'd been spending a lot of energy on if they weren't going to do that. But the other, aside from their jobs. But my question to you is I'm just going to send it out to the group to the WUNA listserv, my feedback and thoughts, and I will submit it, even if, I'm just curious, who do I send it to if that survey link is closed or that response link is closed? Or, because someone told me that closed like this week, and I was like, I don't have any time to do anything about that.
Yeah, and you're right. May 11th was the close of the last round of public input there. But I mean, I would, you've been to the corridor studies webpage before. Yeah, I sent an email to Regional Planning Commission. Yeah.
Yeah, that was my theory, was just to send it to RPC, and then just, because I wanted to let my neighbors know who to talk to. They had no idea when I mentioned, well, do you know this, and this is happening? And they said, no, I filled out the survey, what I asked for. And I said, I know. I said, I filled out the survey too. I said, but now they've come up with a plan. And they were like, what? And I was like, yeah, I know. So I'll let folks know. It might only be me, who knows? People might not care, but at least I do. All right, thanks.
Of course.
Okay, thanks. And the capital improvement plan is on the web. I mean, I know it's
That's
in the meeting
right.
materials from last night's committee of the whole. Is it also on the Public Works website?
There's a web page, and really, if you just do a Google search, Urbana, Illinois CIP, it's the first thing that'll pop up, and you'll see the different sections, a link to a video of us talking about it in the presentation, and
Okay,
we
so
got
there's
a chance to comment on the
okay.
draft.
So there's an actual web page, and if you want to just download the document, it's
Mhm.
like 108 pages. It's good
It's,
reading.
it's a nice light read.
And it's open for public comment until?
That's a good question. I mean, it's going to need to be passed by the end of the fiscal year. We've got probably before the next committee of the whole meeting, I would guess, when it would start to get voted on.
Okay. And there are a lot of good projects. We talked about some of them already. A lot of them involve bicycle lanes and things, but
Mhm.
and also a huge increase in sidewalk spending. A lot of that's the quality of life, but there's also still quite a bit above and beyond that. So that's all good.
Mhm.
Any other reports? Okay. New business. We are delaying till next month. B, discussion about East University Avenue. Audrey has some updates on that, and we started to discuss it last month a little bit, but we were running kind of short of time, so we have plenty of time tonight if you want to spend a little bit more time on it, but it would be nice to end early for a change too.
It'd be a new, if
Oh, I got
you
this
get
While Audrey's handing that out, I will mention that both Jeff Marino and Cynthia have decided not to be on the committee for next year. We're going to take a break. So we have at least a couple of openings if you know of people that want to join.
Let's see. Okay, as we discussed last month, we didn't have opportunity to provide a BPAC position on the East University Avenue IDOT resurfacing project. And it often seems as though the north side of things is less interesting than maybe the south end of town. And this is a great opportunity at very little or no expense to the city to see some traffic improvements made. Now, this is the project that John was just referring to, meeting with IDOT on the 27th, and he said it's under wraps now. Is that how I understand it? You will not explain we have seen what you provided in writing to IDOT. Are we not going to get any update as to what the meeting contained?
No, not at this time. It will be released to the public in a couple months.
Okay, well, I don't think that it's a great idea for us to wait. I've been on this commission for 15 years, and I've seen time after time we get hold of information too late to do anything about it. So I think it would be a good idea for us to go ahead and send a position statement, even though it's late. I know that IDOT says they do not have enough stakeholder input, that they need to get more stakeholders together in order to, and as far as I know from the bicycle travel assessment, they may have not received input from the Urbana Park District. They didn't have that checked off. They did understand that they should get input from the transportation organization, but they didn't have the Regional Planning Commission checked off either, and I don't know whether or not they're actually a stakeholder in this. But they do have local bicycle groups listed as stakeholders. They didn't have the BPAC specifically, but I would think that given local bicycle groups are listed as stakeholders and were requested for input, would mean that we would also qualify as a body whose input is valued. And I realize it is past the deadline. They could possibly just completely ignore our input. And fortunately, if you've looked at the draft letter, a lot of our input has been provided by our local transportation agency, MTD. The only couple of things that were missing were bike lanes and a Maple Street pedestrian crossing, which is, for some reason, I was focused on the idea that people from the north end need to cross there to get to Schnucks, which, because of the large food desert to the north, it seemed to me that was critical for them. But I just talked to a neighbor of mine who wants to bike to Walgreens. He does not want to go in the viaduct. Understandably, it's neither bike nor pedestrian friendly to go under the viaduct there. And he likes to try and make it across Maple Street, but finds it a little scary at his age, over 70. So there are a lot of people on this side of town, so to speak, who need to get to those wonderful businesses on the north side of University Avenue. And I don't know, I believe that some groups may have been able to get a word in about that, but as far as I know, Urbana did not. And I think we're part of Urbana and really should be speaking up as far as what was missed in that initial assessment, which we only have what we have in writing. We don't have any oral report that anything was corrected, and from what we saw that was in writing, there were actual errors. So I received from Nancy some suggested edits. One of the things she strengthened especially was that connectivity between the north and south sides of University Avenue. In the interest of community equity, this is Nancy's additions to the document that you have. BPAC notes that a crosswalk at University and you mean Maple, I believe, Maple Street, would go a long way towards providing safer access to pedestrians and bicyclists to businesses north and south of University Avenue. And she's got a few other grammatical corrections. She also felt that the paragraphs were too long and needed to be broken up for clarity. In particular, the bicycle travel assessment, which you were sent by John on January 27th, and it was due to IDOT January 31st. And so a lot of people really didn't have an opportunity to look at that and may have not looked at it at all once the deadline passed. Sought local input to correct any errors and omissions. IDOT correctly noted that there were residential areas, parks, planned bicycle trails, local businesses, and public transportation facilities. However, the check boxes were not selected, or erroneously were not selected, for the presence of shopping centers, hospitals, employment centers, government offices, industrial plants, churches, and libraries in the vicinity, which the bikeable vicinity is defined as 1.2 miles from the project limits. And so those businesses were then essentially omitted, and as far as we know, were not corrected in any official Urbana transmittal. And then we have the items that we discussed, that with a road diet, which MTD also called for, the bicycle level of service would become a much more friendly C, but C doesn't mean barely acceptable. C means acceptable for the interested but concerned 55% of the population who might be convinced to bicycle if there were lanes out there. The grades are, that sort of A, B, C, D is a little bit misleading. F is probably really an F, but there's also E, and D is acceptable for confident cyclists, which a lot of the cyclists in that area probably are, whether they wanted to be or not, if they're having to use it. Like Cynthia has, like I have as a student, you become sort of confident, whether you really had intended on that.
I had a question on, the MTD letter said that they were in favor of a road diet, but they didn't specifically mention bicycle lanes. So is there such a thing as a road diet without bike lanes?
Oh, absolutely.
So how
Yeah.
does that work?
Lincoln Avenue.
Lincoln Avenue's
Mhm.
a road diet
Oh,
without
so
bike lanes.
you just put
Mhm.
buffers, basically.
Yes, and it's actually conceivable to have bike lanes without a road diet. There is room for that, but they wouldn't be ideal by any means. And and then if there's a road diet, you could have one with or without bike lanes. All those are options.
And if, I think one of our recommendations that you had, bicycle lanes are supported by BPAC with or without a road diet. So if there wasn't a road diet and try to squeeze them in with the existing lanes, would that still theoretically help with speed reduction? I mean, besides putting up the sign, is there a tendency for people to drive slower if there's bike lanes squeezed in?
It would require a study, really, because of the size of the vehicles there. That's a big reason why it's a D
Because there's
level.
more trucks, more
The
truck
size of
traffic.
vehicles.
There are a
And,
lot of buses and trucks.
Right, and my contention, but this would have to be studied and see if there's any data, would be that anybody biking around Urbana and Champaign is used to buses. And the bus drivers are very used to cyclists, so there's a little bit more comfort there, in my opinion, than there is with, say, semis. But there's trucks as well on University Avenue. But I would contend that buses are, don't need to count quite as harshly as a semi. Because we've all experienced a lot of interaction with buses.
But we do need the lane width, so you need at least 11-foot lanes. And so the cross-section there might not support bike lanes with two 11-foot lanes.
Right.
I haven't measured it. I don't know what the entire cross-section is. Do you? Okay.
Well, of course,
Okay.
this is a
I think
IDOT
that
project
answers
as
my
opposed
question
to an
on that.
Urbana project, so.
And Audrey, would it be able to be like multi-use, like people, because like, I remember the first time I tried getting out to the MTD, I didn't realize like I couldn't bike out there. I had to like cut through the railroad tracks and stuff. I couldn't walk, run, or bike out there. And then, I guess my other question is obviously, like, so with the scooters on campus, all my coworkers who don't bike want to use the scooters because they're much more comfortable using a scooter than a bike. The bikes really intimidate them. But so my theory is people, if you put something like this, people using scooters would feel like they had access to a micromobility to get to where they needed to go. So that, I just want to add in that if we can somehow figure out how to make that space, if we can make it clear to IDOT that people would really like that space to be multi-use, multi-level, it would be lovely. So I appreciate your advocacy on this.
It would be, and I wish, unfortunately, we don't have any data, and I don't know whether data collection would be part of an IDOT study or not, if it would be possible to get actual numbers of but of course those numbers would increase if it became more comfortable for people too. And I'm sure the micromobility devices will be very, very popular with people, especially with the gas prices being what they are. I think they would be, there was just a story in the News Gazette this last week about refugees from Afghanistan getting jobs at Flex and Gate and not having cars to get there.
Yeah.
And Flex and Gate trying to arrange some rides and so on.
And you can't do buses, like you can't have robust bus service in those areas because they don't have a high density population. It's the same issue with like Carl Fields. You cannot have robust, but you can do micro-mobility solutions, which is what e-bikes and scooters and these private companies that are attempting to pull these together for us. that's where they really succeed, so.
Audrey, the News Gazette also reported last week that MTD was in negotiations to purchase more properties on the south side of University east of Cunningham. Would that have any bearing on what we're talking about here in terms of their eagerness to cooperate or availability of right-of-way or anything like that? Or should we just ignore
Well,
it?
I believe they really covered it in their request, don't you think, Cynthia? I mean, they knew this was coming when they made their request.
Yeah, they've already installed a multi-use path on their side along the
Okay.
properties they have. The problem is, in terms of the property they're purchasing, they're leapfrogging the recycling property, which will be in between, and whether or not those property owners would cooperate with extending that to the north, I don't know. So whether or not that could be extended because of MTD's land purchases, but it still doesn't do anything about the side path on the north side, which is where most of the mobile home parks are. And they, we've had people who work at MTD who live there, and they're either walking or biking in the street to get back and forth to work when they don't have cars.
Around 6 years ago, the Park District applied for a grant for Ambucks Park, which I realize is only a portion of that north side. But ironically, it didn't connect to enough things. It was more of a linear trail type grant and not a within a park type path. And so it's, there's a history of it continuously sort of being not connected enough when all we want to do is connect it more. And I think something interesting here is that I could see how IDOT would not want to put bike lanes on a road and then think that they're taking on more sort of responsibility or liability, but the truth is people are already using the street as it is. And so, it's much different, but the Crystal Lake Park Road, one of the reasons for the one-way road study was that people are already using it with kids and strollers and everything else. It's documented that it was being used, and so we tried to make it safer. Not saying the processes are the same and the flexibility is the same, but I think that people are already there, and you've documented it with some pictures, and it's really maybe a selling point possibly that you could make it safer for people that are already using it.
And we have got something in this about that. Maybe it's not standing out enough, but many individuals traversing University Avenue on foot or bicycle are confident through necessity rather than choice and would appreciate any improvement in the BLOS. And this is specifically recognized in the IDOT manual statement that in the rural context, which is higher speed roadways, most users would be in the highly confident group, and lower level of service approximating by BLOS-D is considered acceptable. So they do recognize that to some degree, that you have a lower level of service is acceptable where people, and I think later it does say something about just, these people would appreciate any improvement in their safety that are already out there. There is also the fact that Prospect Avenue in Champaign is also IDOT 150, also Illinois 150, and they supposedly are they're planning to put a road diet and bike lanes on that, and that's down to, they're doing a study, but they have proposed it down to Springfield, which is just amazing to me.
And I was really heartened to see the news today. Cynthia posted that Secretary Pete Buttigieg said that we have a crisis on our streets. Far too many of our families, friends, and loved ones have been impacted by tragic results of traffic crashes. We're deploying resources to help fix this. Starting today, funding is available through Safe Streets and Roads for All program, which will provide up to $6 billion over 5 years for communities of all sizes to make their streets safer. We know that traffic fatalities are happening at an outside rate in rural and tribal communities. That's why we're making it as easy as possible for smaller communities and tribal governments to apply for these funds.
But I'm just wondering, like the way that they sort of left out businesses and churches, will they do the same thing with Prospect?
No, that's a project that they've already said they're proposing. They sent a document to Ride, Illinois that said they are proposing, and Champaign has concurred, with a road diet and bike lanes on Prospect. And that has a quite a bit higher ADT, although perhaps I don't know where the trucks and buses stand in that regard there, as well as the finer details of the, width available. But it just is stunning to me that they would consider a road diet and bike lanes in that part of Prospect. It's the north part. It's really quite amazing. And a little bit scary. I mean, naturally you have concerns where there's a lot of driveways, and I don't know how they're going to handle that. So it's
But
in
there's
a
always
study.
cyclists and pedestrians in those areas. Whenever I drive through them, there are always pedestrians and cyclists. So thank goodness they're doing that,
Well, it's amazing. Yeah, it's just amazing. So I'm a little bit baffled why IDOT would prefer to not have any stakeholder input at this time. My understanding is they want more stakeholder input, perhaps not at this moment, but I don't know why they would be needing it they can ignore it if they want and then just look at it when the time comes. I don't quite understand what's the problem here.
So Audrey, are you asking us tonight to approve and support this with the revisions you have on screen here? To go ahead
Yes.
with it?
Yeah.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I
Well-
so far have not heard a reason why we should not send this information forward. We already have missed the boat once. And quite honestly, by quite a bit, because I assumed Urbana was taking the input they received into consideration, but then I saw they did not. So I feel we've already been delayed by quite a bit.
This strikes me as cogently and thoroughly written. Can I move that we,
I have an amendment I'd like to offer,
Okay.
a friendly amendment if possible. I am not comfortable saying that we support a bike lane with or without a road diet, without knowing how many lanes and what width. So we need to alter that slightly, because I can't vote for that without having there be more clarification.
so we're.
Okay, yes, it's there on item, so basically, we have two recommendations that weren't included in the Urbana letter and the MTD letter. And that's the Maple Street crossing and then the bike lanes. And you'd prefer to not have it say with or without a road diet.
Yes.
Should it say with a road diet then?
Well, I think we could say that we would support bike lanes and then, the rest of what you have here is fine, but I guess we could acknowledge that, it would have to be, there would have to be a study to identify the safest design.
Right.
I think that would be necessary.
Yeah, I think that part made me a little uncomfortable as well. I think just knowing that they aren't going to be replacing curbs and things, and it's going to be roughly the same width. The old gutters take up quite a bit of space. They take up a couple of feet. So if you're only adding a few feet for the bike lane, it's not a lot of space when there's trucks going by at 35, 40 miles per hour. If it was successfully, if it was possible to successfully reduce that speed, and that probably is one of the reasons Prospect has a little bit more possibility, is I don't think the speeds are quite as high, besides the bus or the truck traffic being a slightly smaller percentage, although a lot more traffic, I think, on Prospect.
They have a great amount of congestion, and congestion is really helpful for keeping traffic going slowly.
So it actually goes
Yeah,
slower
it's very
because of it,
helpful. Yeah,
And
that's-
because
and
East University doesn't have that congestion, I just think it's going to be hard to slow people down. So, yeah, I think that's the main thing that.
Which is a good argument for a road diet.
And that's why the road diet would be helpful, because it would increase congestion and slow traffic and increase the perception of risk for the vehicles.
Yeah, and at the same time, I see the information from the Bike Illinois and other groups that say some infrastructure is better than others, and the studies seem to hold that out. But at the same time, as far as I know, we haven't ever had a fatality on East bicycle fatality. So we don't
It's,
want to
it's
make
not
anything
just,
worse.
yeah, it's not just Ride Illinois that says some is better than none. IDOT actually has it in their manual.
That's right. So
Yeah.
they say some infrastructure is
I
better
think
than
it's because,
none.
Bill, you use it once, like the first time I tried to bike out to the MTD, and I was like, oh my God. Yeah, and I'm a very
I'll take
confident
my
cyclist,
chances
and I
with
was
the
like,
railroad.
I guess this isn't happening. They don't obviously want me to bike out here or walk out here, and so you're just designing it so, and that's the concept. If we keep it the same, the concept is do not bike, do not use micromobility, do not walk here, and if you do, you're on your own, and too bad if you get hit or die.
Well, I definitely think, so the side path, that was in everybody's letter already, that the side path should be completed to the park and the crossing?
Mhm,
Okay.
yes.
Right, but the problem is if you only have a side path on one side, then people have to cross the road. So for example, I'm riding out there on my bike regularly, and I am riding in the lane. I have a rear view mirror. I watch all the drivers behind me. I go as fast as I can to get off there as fast as possible, and no one's run over me yet. But if I had to use the side path, then I'd have to cross again. So then you've got to you've got to have crossing. So it's not that simple. It needs a study.
I think
identify how to
the
design it.
crossing at Maple Street, honestly, I think that's the
Well,
highest
but then if I got to
priority.
MTD and I'm on a
Yeah.
side path on the north side, let's say I have to cross somewhere to get over to MTD. So you're going to end up with additional crossings if you've only got the side path.
Well, this is 80, mind you, but I used to just bike on the wrong side of the road. I was so terrified of crossing. I just went as fast as I could to Maple. Now, had I been hit, there would have been, no settlement for me, for sure. Which is another interesting thing, that you're safer on a bike in a lot of places than you are on foot. Because basically, if you're hit, you didn't belong there. But if you're on a bike, you are a vehicle, and you are subject. If a car hits you, they get ticketed, and there's a settlement because they were driving too fast for conditions. If they didn't see you, if you're a pedestrian, tough luck.
Yeah, I think you could just take out the with or without a road diet.
we're looking
Yeah,
for
yeah.
language here
I
that'll
think
work.
that would work for me.
Suppose it was something like, bicycle lanes on University Avenue will improve accessibility and safety for all road users in conjunction with a road diet and are supported by a BPAC as part of such a plan. Would
Okay.
that work?
Sure.
Sure.
I think it's good because it is also possible. I'm just my guesstimate looking at their tool. It seemed that it would go to a C, but it's possible it wouldn't go to a C, so we
And-
still would
And a
support
road
it.
diet will lower the speeds, and that's really key to improving safety here.
Yeah, absolutely.
It also increases the joy of being on that piece of road and trying to move through it on your commute. I think it's funny that we always focus on death, like, like it's always like, oh, no one died there, so yeah, that's cool. And like, and because we're trying to make a space that we don't want people to use,
But
and then
there's a
it's,
misery index you're talking about.
yeah.
It's
And-
level of stress. It'd
Yeah.
be a level of stress, which is
Yeah.
what is used in our bike plan.
Yeah.
Well, and I'd like to think of level of stress for the drivers as well. I'd like to think that would go down and they would say, hey, Urbana's a pretty neat town. There is a welcome to Urbana sign out there that right now people are probably zipping by too fast to see, but it could use maybe some fresh paint. Yeah, so it is a gateway to Urbana that it would be really neat if people felt less stress and saw,
I like the amendments. Can we
Okay,
jot that down? And
I move we endorse and support this letter with the language change which we just discussed at the beginning of paragraph 2, or item 2. Right?
I'll second the motion.
I'm still,
He's thinking about it.
I don't know. There's
Discussion.
there's a lot in this letter. I think,
Well, I'm sure minor changes could be made.
So this is to the mayor and city council.
CC'd to IDOT and community development, just for their information as well.
Okay, so it's been moved and seconded to approve this letter as amended, right? Okay. Any further discussion or questions?
The last question I have is, so is this the letter you want to send, or do you want to like tighten it up a little more?
Oh, no, for sure. It's still subject to tightening. Nancy's, I didn't have a chance to print out Nancy's edits, but she did, as I mentioned, make a few edits. And she also separated the large paragraphs into shorter paragraphs.
Yeah, because the one
So-
thing I always remind myself is we're sending this to people who are very busy, who don't want to spend a lot of time on it, and who probably are not very interested in road stuff. Most people are not very interested. One thing I know is people,
Until you do it.
even though it desperately impacts everything they do, they're not very interested in road stuff. But yeah, but thank you, Audrey. This is just fantastic. I really appreciate this.
My pleasure. Yeah, it's interesting. People aren't very interested in road stuff. I mean, everybody thinks that they're experts on policing, and how often do you interact with police, you know? We interact with roads every time we step out the door, and yet we're like, oh, it's not our problem,
No,
somebody else
that's
will
like,
take
this
care
has
of
been my
it.
long-running thing, like, how many people get killed by gun every year? How many people get killed by cars every year? And what do we all talk about? Guns, 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 guns.
Let alone the injuries, which are,
Oh, yeah, we don't
you
talk
know,
about injuries.
incredible for
We don't talk
cars
about the
and much
destruction of
smaller
the
for guns.
environment. We don't
Yeah.
talk about asthma. I mean, it's
Yeah.
mind-blowing to me how we want to, like, try to solve a thing that is honestly very complex to solve when we can actually solve something that's pretty straightforward, frankly.
And we're all experts on that topic too, even though we never interact with it. We're all,
Okay, I guess my comment or question would be, if it's gonna be edited some more, should we wait and approve it next month? Or is it, I mean, it sounds like nothing's gonna change IDOT's plan at this point to at least publish their initial, what was it called, plan or
Yeah, the multi-year program.
multi-year program?
well, I won't be here next month, and I think several others said they won't be here as well. So
Okay.
that might be one problem.
I gather the clock is ticking on or having some kind of an impact if we're gonna have anything at all.
Yeah, it's already terribly late as it is, and as I mentioned, IDOT's welcome to ignore it. I don't think they'll be seriously
Bill, you could
offended.
send your changes to Audrey, because it looks to me like Bill has some changes he would like.
Well, I don't know. I think it's fine. I kind of agree that there's probably a lot of stuff that people won't read or that would kind of make their eyes glaze over with the bicycle level service CDE and stuff like that. But
Well, yeah, the reason it was brought up is because the bicycle travel assessment and the letter from Urbana specifically complained that it's only a D, and did not mention that that's 2 levels up from F, and that D is not as bad as it sounds. D is acceptable for confident cyclists. It's not ideal for families with children. That's a C level. You would never guess that from those levels. C sounds like, oh, barely okay, but C is for families with children. That's a different thing. So that's why that's brought up, because it specifically came out in the IDOT bicycle travel assessment, and Urbana reiterated that in replying, said, yes, we do not advocate for bike lanes because it would only bring it up to a D. So that
that's
is
what-
why
I think
there's
it's
quite a
worth
bit of
saying.
definition about what the D is. Naturally, to any layperson reading that,
They can
that
skip
makes
it.
sense. D sounds awful.
But
what's
that's
a
what,
D?
but I think, I mean, it's worth like, if people skim that, they can skim it. If they know what it is, then they'll,
Right. I am a licensed professional engineer, and I have actually done studies for IDOT and written IDOT reports. So I don't have like this huge idea that everybody's an expert on everything. It's surprising how much lay people can know compared to experts.
So
Audrey, sorry, Nancy, go ahead first.
Do we have something specific that we want the city council and the mayor to do?
I would like them to be aware and to talk with Public Works about the direction this project is taking and what Public Works is advocating for.
Okay, does that need to be put into the letter?
Well, that is the BPAC mission, is to advise the mayor and council on the direction of the city. I feel that that
think
should be
that's in there.
understood.
The letters
Okay.
to the mayor and the city council, so.
Right, I just didn't know if we had, well, aside from advising, if we had any other plan of action for them.
Well, I mean, it is always a good idea to put a call for action, and when you want an action, sometimes you can assume too much. That's for sure. Perhaps there should be a distinct call for action. I just had hoped that the city council or the mayor would be interested in talking to Public Works about the direction that they're taking this project.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't think a direct call to action is a problem. Just put it at the end, just to be really clear. And we can always put it, 'cause it seems like this is how we are
Well, it
being.
does-
It seems to me like BPAC at this point in the, how the city's working right now, it seems like BPAC is not getting we're not part of the discussion. It doesn't sound like our input's wanted. It just sounds like we are just a bunch of people that, like, the city's letting us meet, they're letting us talk to each other, but they don't really quite know what to do with us. So I think if we just put a really clear thing at the bottom is like, this is what we would like to have happen, that would be cool. Because I think that's kind of all we can do right now.
Well,
from what I can
if
pick
you
up.
look at the last paragraph, I
as a
did try to be, very positive about what this brings to the city. BPAC recommends that this opportunity for positive change and connection should be embraced with enthusiasm by the city of Urbana in close coordination with IDOT. It is an IDOT project. It's
I
not a
think if
city
you
project.
boldface that sentence and the one which begins "in conclusion," you're gonna get pretty close to what you want in terms
Oh,
of going on
okay.
record.
And
Audrey,
That's
you
fine.
mind?
yeah, I was going to say, like, if I do hear like everybody's saying like it's too long, the letter, and I understand like some people might skip over a lot of the stuff. Can we add, like, in the beginning itself, write down the main recommendations, that these are what we want to do, and for more explanation, keep reading or read the whole thing?
Okay, I think that could probably go, like, right at the bottom of the first paragraph, or a separate two-sentence
second.
paragraph. Again, it adds more
think-
length,
yeah.
but it might be worth it if they're gonna skip the whole
Yeah.
letter.
I think after the second paragraph, or maybe the second paragraph could be that, like the executive summary or the abstract. And then,
Yeah, because right now it just essentially chronologically details
Yeah.
what happened.
yeah,
Mm-hmm.
You could also put like section headers and people could decide whether or not they want to read it.
That's a good idea.
Yeah, so then they know if they can skip over
yeah,
the,
like short description, long description type thing.
yeah, and they can just read the header and grasp the information that's in the section if they're not interested.
Conclusion, recommendation.
Okay, let's try to move this. So we already have the motion on the floor.
Bill,
I-
I just wanted to just close my thought that I'm going to vote no for this because, like I said, I think this is what BPAC should be doing. My advice is that we wait to see what IDOT's proposal is, and it'll be a more effective use of our efforts. IDOT will listen to BPAC's input. I think the timing is not quite right. That's all I got to say. Thank you.
Okay. I mean, I'm inclined to agree with staff that, I think John probably does have a little insight on how IDOT will, what they'll propose, and it may be something that we haven't thought of, and, I think there are some potential things that we might want to address after the proposal.
Well,
And-
there would be nothing stopping us from addressing those things at that time. And even completely withdrawing our statements if we find out something shockingly new. At the present time, we don't have that information. We haven't even been given a smidgen of that information.
It
I'm
also
not
sounds like-
inclined to,
Yeah, I don't know, but I'm just, okay. I'm probably gonna vote no too.
So when is that meeting with IDOT again?
There will be a public release of their multi-year program, and
Yep.
generally it comes in July or August.
Let me ask this, would it be useful, do you think, Audrey, if we just reduced it down to a couple of paragraphs from the end of your very well-written proposal? BPAC recommends the city of Urbana should advocate for every possible improvement to access across University Avenue by every travel route, and so on that way, and then down to the final paragraph, in addition to bike lanes and going down to, in coordination with IDOT, where basically we're going on record saying, let's move forward here with things which achieve these purposes, and then hang fire on everything else too, as you say, till IDOT comes up with something. Step into
And maybe we can sort of emphasize, we're talking to our city council and our people, and we're just letting IDOT know.
well, that was actually
Right, so if we kind
the
of.
plan, it's to
This is
the
just-
city council.
They're getting a carbon copy.
And is there anything in this letter that wasn't provided as input by the bicycle advocacy groups?
Yes. Basically, it's the details that we're talking about omitting right now. The direct response to the bicycle travel assessment. That's what they talked about, their vision and their overall reasons. They did not address specifically what the bicycle travel assessment comment was. Also, because MTD was sending their letter in parallel, they didn't coordinate with that.
I think you've got information in here that's very helpful in pointing out the standards and the guidance that we purport to be going by in relation to this. So I think we should go ahead and vote on it. We can always add more feedback later. And I don't feel that there's a problem with our providing it, giving them input now.
I agree, kind of. Why not send it to city council now?
I agree.
I mean, if it's not going to, city council will take it to the IDOT anyway, right?
Pardon me?
I'm asking, city council will send their comments or input to IDOT.
Probably
So-
not.
Probably not. I would think city council directs the public works to
Okay.
coordinate with IDOT.
Okay.
Yeah.
But still, can we just, I would still send this out to
Yes.
city council, maybe they can add something to it, or anything. They would have some time to discuss amongst themselves.
Right. That's
Yep.
what they're there
I
for.
think that's what we need to do.
Yeah, and I suppose we could acknowledge that there will be an announcement made in July or August, and this is kind of background information so that they will know what BPAC's position is, or something like that.
Yeah, I believe that they were expecting BPAC to have a position that was prior to January 31st. Obviously, we got this information on the 27th. It wasn't possible for us to have a position on January 31st. It could be considered embarrassing that it took us this long to come up with a response, but we actually didn't realize we needed to. Several people had made their own comments, and it wasn't until I saw the bicycle travel assessment had not incorporated anything. that I realized we needed to make our own position, which actually in the original transmittal is something the Public Works Director, Tim Cowan, kind of expected, that we might have a position that would be different than theirs. He actually did expect that according to the email I have. However, I think he just didn't realize that 4 days is not enough for us to have a meeting, get it on the agenda, and have a position.
Okay, sounds like we're ready to vote, I guess. So so the motion is to send the letter with
Editorial changes.
editorial changes and the one substantial change of dropping the with or without. Okay, so all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed?
Nay.
Sounds like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 to 2, something like that. Okay, that motion carries. Thank you. Anything else? Oh, so
Crash data.
data.
Not good news.
Do you want to pull that up?
Your crash update,
Yeah.
the PowerPoint or the PDF?
Just
The
a
agenda,
PDF. is
the
fine.
agenda says crash date, by the way.
Okay, so
Something in the Wall Street Journal.
This is Bill's. Bill has a
Yes,
quick
that's my Strava
uh,
alert.
update. I
John,
believe.
quick question. Big Blue Bike Rack. Big Blue Bike Rack, is it coming to downtown Urbana anytime soon? You have no idea, do you?
This is my first time hearing about that.
We're gonna pop into the Blue Bike Rack, and then I was like, no bike rack.
Okay,
Bill,
so this is the,
you're gonna talk about.
yeah, would you mind doing the slides for me? And I can. It's just like four slides.
Big blue bike rack in June.
We want to see your face for a change.
That's what I thought, but I just wanted, just thank you. I was sort of like, I think the miscellaneous date's gonna be June, but I just want to ask.
Okay, so we just wanted to provide a quick update on, this is just data from the Urbana Open Data Portal, which is pretty much raw police data. So you can consider that it's preliminary, but just wanted to show some trends that are shown by the pandemic. So the blue line is the 2019 before the pandemic, 2020 is the pandemic. So you can see like in March and April when stay-at-home orders went into play, everything, the crash rate went down to about, looks like 50 to 60% of normal for a few months, and then picked back up in the summer. So summers didn't make much difference, but then in the fall, because students had the stay-at-home option, there weren't as many students here. So the crash rates went back down. September, October through December. And then in 2021, the gray line,
And
there's
Bill,
still,
just to confirm, these are, when you're talking crashes, what kind of crashes are you talking?
this is total crashes
Ones that were reported and needed an
in
ambulance,
Urbana to Urbana Police.
and needed an ambulance, and,
No,
no,
these are all crashes, whether there's injuries or not,
cool.
and only Urbana Police. So this doesn't include University Police. But then like the gray line is still kind of low. Well, it goes up in January. I mean, it's normal in January, but then you can see in February, March, April, it's low again because that once the semester starts, the normal students aren't back yet. But then this year, the gray pretty much tracked ever since, or the end of last year, ever since April, May. So over the summer and in the fall, it was pretty much back to normal. So normal seems to be about 750 crashes per year in Urbana. And we're slightly ahead of that in January, February so far this year. Okay, next slide. As far as bike and pedestrian crashes go, again, these are kind of unchecked raw numbers, but the bike crashes in 2019 were high, both bike and pedestrian. So there were 20 crashes, 19 with injury. In 2020, 13 crashes, 8 with injury. In 2021, 11 crashes with 7 with injury. So again, that's probably at least in 2020, mostly because there weren't as many students around and people were working from home or whatever. Although there were a lot of people out biking, but just less traffic overall. And then ped crashes, 19 with 19 injuries in 2019. 2020, 9 with 8 injuries. 2021, 11 with 8 injuries.
Hey, Bill, what was the last slide about then? Wasn't that also crash data?
Total crashes.
Oh,
Yeah, the previous,
including- okay.
yeah, so this is just pedestrians and
yeah.
bikes, and this is total, and then with injury.
Mhm.
So when they, go ahead and go to the next one. When they report the data, almost everything, it's kind of a weird system, but almost everything is either involving injury or, go ahead, show the next slide too. And that's involving non-injury. So they basically categorize them into those two levels, and then below that they can also fall into one of these other categories. So if you back up one, let's go back to the injury ones. So in 2019 there were 151 crashes involving injuries. In 2020 there were 117, 2021 175. So that's the total with injuries. And then each of those may also fall in one of those other categories, one or more of those other categories. It could have been an accident involving bicycles, could have been an accident involving bicycles and a hit and run. So there's things like that you can look at. And then the deaths, those definitely haven't been verified and everything. Well, the third line down is accident involving death. Sometimes they include it as an injury, and sometimes it's just an accident involving death. And then also sometimes it shows up as an injury at first, and then if the person dies in the hospital a few days later, it doesn't ever, in our data, it doesn't get changed to death.
They have to die within 30 days.
Well, and that would be for the official data, but even that doesn't show up in this immediate data. So it has to, it goes through a quality control process, and then it gets really fleshed out. But this is the kind of data that we can get pretty much month to month. I mean, this only goes up through February because I just threw it together today and I already had that downloaded, but they have it online up through just up to like a week ago. You can get crash data. So you can get pretty good immediate data. You just have to kind of keep in mind that it hasn't been verified and doesn't have a lot of quality control and everything on it.
And I don't mean to sound like a vehicle advocate, but I am a vehicle advocate. But I can't imagine how much these motorized vehicle accidents cost our city. I mean, you have, police officers spending hours and thousands of dollars, and there's quite a few of them. That's all. It's just my deep thought.
I don't know. Did I have any other slides on, or was that it?
No, I guess
That's it? Okay.
Mhm.
So I just want to add, by the way, if our city officers handle crashes similarly, I will tell you there are a lot of crashes that are not included in this data, because my son was hit by a car several months ago, and I went over to the scene. He wasn't hurt. The woman was at fault, but the officer asked if it was okay if we didn't issue her a ticket, and that was fine. But then I asked him, but is this report going to be included in the data? So if there's not property damage of what, 1,500 or 2,000, they have the option of filing it as a report that does not go into the database. And I said, no, I want this to be included in the database. And the reason why the officers don't want to do that is because it takes a long time. And so if there wasn't an injury, there's not property damage, then they want to do, and I forgot the term for it, this other report, which is not going to show up in all of this data based on what I asked about, because it does not go into the crash databases. And so he did go ahead and file it that way because I asked him to, but most people are not going to make that request. So there are crashes, and this was a campus police officer, so I don't know if
That would
city
be in our
police.
data then.
Yeah, and so I don't know whether or not city officers have a similar process. And so I think that's a question we might ask because, my son didn't have to go to the hospital, but it was a crash, and it was at Goodwin and Florida, and there's the problem with that intersection. The stop sign is so far back from the intersection that a motorist, has to pull forward in order to see, and she didn't see him coming down the multi-use path. He was on a longboard, and he thought she did see him. So she ran over his longboard
I was saying,
and hit him.
but Cynthia, this also leads into why bike theft is really, why people don't want to deal with bike theft. I mean, I've been thinking about, because I'll be purchasing probably 2 e-bikes in the next couple, probably 3 e-bikes for the household in the next probably 2 years. And they're thousands of dollars a piece.
Oh,
And
yeah.
so if those get stolen, I am going to ask for a report. I am, whereas I was on the highway and I got rear-ended by a semi over Christmas, that was, you guys, that was a $10,000 hit.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's insane. And there's no report of it. No one reported it. It was hit and run, middle of a snowstorm. So there's a lot of accidents. So this
A
is all
lot of
very,
crashes not in the data.
this is all just very difficult to figure out. But
Yeah.
thank you, Bill, for trying to pull together what you can
Yeah,
find.
no, I appreciate it. I just wanted to point out that even with the data that we have, we know we're not getting all of the crashes reported, even when a vehicle is involved, because of the system, the way the system is set up.
Yeah, okay, I'll try to invite someone from the police department, or at least talk with someone and get some more information.
That would be good for us
We
to
did
be
have,
sure
Rich
and submit.
Searles with us a couple years ago, but I think we could get either him or somebody else, so.
It'd be good if we submitted some questions in advance too, I think, so they're prepared. There's also this accident on private property is interesting because they don't issue tickets for those. At least, I don't know which one they do, not for injuries that I've seen, and I'll show you some examples of that in a moment. I know that they don't get counted in, for example, the national PED fatality statistics don't include deaths on private property, which seems kind of astonishing, but
So wait, what you're saying is like that intersection that Bill is interested in getting paint on the ground on by the university, where cars frequently run off onto private property, stuff like that doesn't get counted?
I'm not
it doesn't
sure.
get ticketed. It's
Ticketed.
there in the count.
I know, that's what I
They
can't
had the
figure out.
count
There's
there.
not a
Yeah.
ticket.
I don't understand it myself exactly.
Yeah,
Bill,
'cause if
this will
there's
be a
not
question
ticket,
for
That's a great question to figure out
Searles
how that.
because I have examples where they did not ticket.
Yeah,
A
see-
person hit someone and they're
Yeah.
not ticketed because it was in a parking lot.
Yeah, because like when
So-
I was on the highway, I got rear-ended by a semi, and we pulled over, but the semi kept rolling, and there's no it was just our insurance, that was it, and our deductible, which was the cost of an e-bike.
Well, to add to the information on the crash data, I thought I would share with you all that the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration released data today on crashes, and the news is really bad. There was a 10.5% jump in fatalities over 2020, which they said is the largest percentage increase since they began keeping fatality data in 1975. And so in 2020, there were 43,000 people killed on our roadways. So what we are doing is not working. The system that we are building is unsafe, and we have got to change what we're doing if we want to reduce the number of people being killed on our roadways. And I didn't read the whole report. I did post it on Champaign-Urbana Cyclists, and you can look it up. It just came out, and I got a news alert on it. So it's not good news,
And those deaths heavily impact they impact a certain population that we seem to be okay allowing to die.
and there's millions of serious life-altering injuries that are also part of that.
Well, I would
crash.
mention that there are some pockets that are better than others, and thinking globally and acting locally is as urgent as ever, maybe more so.
Yep.
So I think that we can strive to be one of those pockets, Urbana. Okay, and that's why we have Vision Zero. I know we haven't moved forward recently on that. As everyone knows, there's a lot of crises in the city that are taking all the oxygen at the moment. But it's always there. We're ready to pick it up when the time is right. Okay, speaking of John and time. Building and sustaining leadership, collaboration, and accountability. We need to get this task force together, and right now, the people are very, very swamped, as everyone who's following anything is aware. So getting them together is a challenge in itself, but we can move forward with the things that we are able to do. And that's collecting, analyzing, and using data to try to understand the trends and the disproportionate impacts of traffic deaths, as Annie was saying. Prioritizing equity and community engagement, looking to manage speed to safe levels. That'll come up in some of these crashes in a moment. And we do have a timeline, which is 2030, to achieve zero traffic deaths, and we're at 2022, so we can hope that we're going to make up for lost time when we do turn our attention back to this. So going back to strategy 2, the activity of collecting, analyzing, and using data to understand the trends. The process involves reviewing data from RPC published reports. We haven't got a new one. We have reviewed those that they've put out so far. And as Bill was just going over, reviewing data from the Urbana Open Portal, and then crash reports, starting with bicycle and pedestrian involvement. And that's very, very apropos to Urbana because we have an extremely high percentage of our fatalities and injuries are bicycle and peds, much more than the nationwide average. The nationwide average is around 20%, and we're 50%. And here's you've seen this before, but I still find this kind of shocking. I can update it at some point. I want to use the data from RPC for this, though, because this is, as Bill mentioned, there's a lot of questions about the local data coming right off the portal, whereas RPC has done that QA/QC, so I'm waiting for their data to come out before we update this. But we're looking here at 10-year trends. Champaign, the first 10 years, which is 08 to 17. I'm sorry, is it 08 to 17? No, that's the red bar. It's the previous, 1998 to 07 is the blue bar. So that's the earlier period. The orange bars are 08 to 17. So the most recent 10-year period that we have from RPC. And in Champaign, the total actual number of deaths was 8 for that first 10-year period, and it went down to 6 for the second year period. The plot that does not match those numbers, that's the number per 100,000. So they went from 1 per 100,000 to like 0.6 per 100,000. The second plot for Urbana, we had just three deaths in that 10-year period, 1998 to 07. And then in the most recent 10-year period shown here, we've had 10 deaths, and we've continued at that rate of 1 death a year since then, since that data. So it's not good. Because we're only 40,000, that translates to about 2.41 per 100,000, a very unacceptable number, higher than Chicago, higher than Boston. It's very shocking. And they're mostly, well, they're half peds, as it shows. So this is why it's important that we move forward on Vision Zero, because for our size, we're far from acceptable. So Bill just went through, you saw the graphs that Bill showed, and these numbers are close. They're not exactly identical for one reason or another. They don't come out exactly the same, but they are, I'm sure if we got together for a couple hours, we'd work it out. They're very close. The number of bike crash injuries, so far this year, 0. We had 9 last year. I don't know what happened in 2019 that we had so many crash injuries, and ped crash injuries, too. And so the numbers have been better for that. The deaths are not so good. And then why we study these things. We're looking at potential targeted messaging. Our numbers are too small to really do a good systematic analysis of systematically saying, oh, this type of intersection is going to cause this problem because it happened here. We're still at the point of looking at individual cases like the pedestrian crash that occurred at Vine and Elm Street. That was actually a child, resulting in letters. Raising awareness is, right now the newspaper does not cover crashes as they did in the past. Partly that's the HIPAA, the federal law regarding privacy of health issues. There's not as much of a story for them because they can't really follow it like they used to in the past. You used to find out what happened to injuries, and now you might hear one thing, maybe, if it's super serious or involves a DUI, but other than that, they disappear from view, whereas in the past, you actually had some idea. Unless they happen to do a story because of some human interest, like the Paralympian that was seriously injured on Windsor. And so the vast majority are completely unreported, and thankfully Urbana is very good about responding to FOIAs as well as the open data portal. Champaign is somewhat less so. You can't even get that data from the open portal in Champaign. You have to FOIA to even get the fact that there are these crashes. The characteristics of the crashes can suggest the need for ordinances and education. We just had the death near Schnucks and it was listed as a pedestrian, though, as we know they were on a micromobility device. And I'm going to go over that in a little bit of detail because BPAC did put in a request to the Traffic Commission to look at left turns there, both coming out and going into Schnucks. When I looked into this, there was even more support for that request, and I just don't know if the Traffic Commission would be aware of that. The pedestrian death on East Main at Dewey has raised questions about the speed limit that's set above the residential statutes, the default statute. And then there's also some lack of citations. And we went over this before, so I'm not going to go over this. These were the crashes January through September. And then these are the ones that we missed at that time because we didn't have it October through December. And so there have been 5 ped bike crashes with injuries. There were several more crashes. They didn't seem to have injuries. Sometimes they had bike damage, but I think a lot of it was under $1,500 or $2,000. Sometimes car damage too. And I did not list them if they didn't have an injury involved, just to keep it simple for this purpose. So we've had a couple driveway injuries. A driver hit a ped in the driveway. And we've had a couple parking lot, which we didn't in that first 9 months. There were no parking lot injuries, but then we've had 2. And neither one was ticketed. And then the bicycle injury, Lincoln Avenue south of Nevada, I'm going to show that report in a moment. And there was a terrible sounding one at Springfield at Matthews by Uni High. The driver hit the cyclist in the crosswalk 2 times, knocked them over, hit them again, then drove on the sidewalk to escape. There were multiple witnesses. The car was ID'd, but a lot of times people don't realize you also need to be able to recognize the driver. And that's a big concern with the tinted windows these days, that's not being enforced. And who's going to recognize the driver when you can't see them at all in the first place? And I have not followed through. I'm going to ask again if they have found it, because they did know who the vehicle owner was. It was someone in Whiteheath. But whether they ever got hold of the driver or not, I'm curious about. So here's the one that was on Lincoln Avenue. This was in October. It was a student riding a bike. Now this is one of the university multi-use paths, and of course this points to a problem with the side paths as driveways. People may not realize this is a multi-use path, but there is a nice sign there that indicates to drivers to be careful. And the driver came down this way. The bicyclist was coming up this way. Perhaps he was in the shadow and they didn't see them clearly. But anyway, the driver hit the cyclist right there. This is the view from the cyclist's point of view. So you can see yield to peds. They've got these signs very frequently on this multi-use path. You would otherwise think it's just a sidewalk.
I truly did not know that was a multi-use path, and I use it all the time. And I
yeah,
have no
the
idea
sign is
why they
everywhere.
had that weird sign there. And
Bike on this campus for 30 years. I always thought that was a sign.
Yeah, there seems to be sort of a policy not to put a big sign up that says this is a
Well,
multi-use path.
It's not
but-
technically a multi-use path. It is a sidewalk, but bicyclists are allowed to use sidewalks except in designated locations like downtown Urbana, Green Street, downtown Champaign. And so I think that these signs are a result of the fact that people are using this for bicycling because they're allowed to, it's legal, and no one wants to bike on Lincoln.
Yeah,
Well,
and
I
it's wi-
think that
it's
it
wider
actually is a
further up.
designated
Yeah,
multi-use because
it's
they did
further up.
study
There's-
Lincoln in some detail when they did the
Yeah,
road
further
diet.
up, it's wider.
There's
Yeah.
a segment there, the crossing of Iowa goes up, and then, so there's a short segment, probably 150 feet.
is
that
wide
goes
enough.
from Iowa up to where the bicycle path comes from the
But
west
this is
side.
not wide enough to be
Yeah.
classified as a
So
multi-use
that's a
path.
designated.
Perhaps it runs short. I don't know
But
because
where
I know,
this
for
is farther
example,
north, actually, so they probably do have that sign, like Cynthia was saying, just
Mhm.
because people stayed on the sidewalk, and it's legal there, but there is
And you
a-
don't want to bike on
there's a
Lincoln.
segment there that's
Yeah.
designated.
This is a horrible area to bike in. I mean, it's an embarrassment.
well, I certainly hope bikes are yielding to peds on here. That's all I can say. I would hope. Yeah. So I'm showing this part of the narrative and diagram is required for these kind of reports, and they don't have the name on there. There is the name on the first page, but I just out of privacy concerns, I'm leaving the name off. But this is what the diagram looks like now, and it used to be a lot more clear when they drew the sketch with a few lines than you saw. But on the other hand, maybe this is more accurate. So they put in a little car and they put in a little dot, white dot, where the crash happened. And on the first page of the report, there will be that will be marked on a diagram that the damage was to the front of the car. And so here, and then in these reports, Unit 1 is the guilty party as determined by the police. Unit 1 is always who they've decided is guilty. In this case, Unit 1 was traveling southbound on South Lincoln. A vehicle slowed to turn into the parking lot. Unit 2 was traveling northbound. Not surprisingly, they don't have really any speed estimate or anything on that sidewalk. As Unit 1 was turning in, Unit 2 attempted to stop to avoid the collision, and they collided where the sidewalk meets the driveway. So I thought that from this, I thought that the bike was about to hit the car and tried to stop, but actually the bike was hit by the car. He was naturally trying to stop. Now, Unit 2 was not wearing a helmet.
Neither
and he
was Unit 1, I suspect, but that was not noted in the report.
Yeah.
And neither
Yeah.
were legally required to wear a helmet.
There was, in my opinion, a certain amount, and this is not surprising to empathize with drivers when you spend all day driving. And Unit 2 was not wearing a helmet, thrown onto the hood and into the windshield. The driver was not injured, but Unit 2 was taken to the hospital. And there was no ticket issued in this case, because even though they do recognize that Unit 1 is the aggressor, or essentially the at fault, yes.
Because it was private property?
No, it doesn't say why. It doesn't say why. My suspicion is that Unit 2 probably didn't even know that he actually had the right of way. He may have been going too fast and felt like I should have known better. He clearly was probably in that shadow. This is in October.
Well, this is.
I could understand sympathy
it's
with
a-
the driver.
Yeah, this is a standard issue in that one of the reasons why we always encourage people not to use sidewalks is because you're moving at a pace that's faster than a pedestrian, and vehicles are looking for objects moving at the pace of a pedestrian. They're not looking for objects moving at the pace of a bike or an e-bike, and that's why I'm sure this happened. Is the driver just didn't see the person coming?
Right.
Not that it makes it, and I'm not trying. I'm just saying it's like this is. Oh, it's time to go. Yeah, because it's just like
Is it
it's just
9?
bad info. Lincoln Avenue just has terrible infrastructure.
No,
Period.
I agree, and I've seen bikes shoot out of sidewalks, and it's scary, and I understand that. And I also believe, and this is maybe another question, I believe the police have a certain amount of leeway to not issue a ticket. A lot of times I think they would be more likely to say exactly why they didn't. I did look up Unit 2's driving record. or Unit 1's, I'm sorry. I checked Unit 2's too. I don't think he was a driver, but Unit 1's driving record, and she was a young driver and had a speeding ticket of 15 to 20 over the limit a few years ago. So I frankly would have thought that it would be appropriate to give her a ticket as an educational piece of advice that thank goodness she didn't hurt someone seriously this time, but maybe next time. You know, that was just my personal opinion, but of course, opinions can differ. Let's see. Where's the... So that was there, and you can see there's a shadow where he would have come out, so it might have been difficult. Oh, okay, and then here's the view for the Schnucks crash, which so there's the images right there, and believe me, it's just as bad on paper as it is here. This is what they're going with now instead of a diagram. So, you know, it probably has its pluses and minuses, but it's very hard to see. But there's the vehicle. There's the white for the damage to the vehicle, which was a Dodge Ram. And we all remember this story from the News Gazette, and the News Gazette covered it. They interviewed the policeman pretty much. But what's interesting is to see the narrative from the driver's point of view, too. And this is something that I'd just like to see if the Traffic Commission takes into consideration with our request. The driver of Unit 1 stated that as he executed his left-hand turn, he maintained his focus on the vehicle in the oncoming lane. So he's saying where his concern was. And this is something that you can't just, you know, ignore. He also stated as he completed his turn, he then saw the Unit 2 in front of him, and he did not have time to stop. And then the police in the News Gazette said that Smith, the policeman, noted the difficulty of trying to make a left turn from where the pickup driver did, and said the only action taken against him for now was the issuance of a traffic ticket for failure to yield to a pedestrian in the roadway. He was paying attention to vehicle traffic waiting to get across the intersection, and he failed to see the gentleman. And he also added the law was on Mr. Wilske's side, and this is where our media does a wonderful job when they give us this educational information. Wilske had clearly established himself in the roadway, and once established, all traffic has to allow him to get across, Smith said. The law says he was crossing properly because he was going from one curb cutout directly to the other cutout on the opposite side of the intersection. News Gazette also ran a photo of the truck being measured with the scooter. They didn't have the body there, but you know, I saw on social media someone complaining, oh, I thought they would have more class than to show this kind of, you know, and to their surprise, they were responded to by the son who said, by the way, my father was a news photographer and would thoroughly have approved of documenting this in the press. I mean, this is the importance for us to not be, as we all know, the Vietnam War could have gone on and on if they hadn't started showing bodies. So this is what happens. And then finally, we've got, let's see.
I have to say, I was driving to Carle Hospital today, and I used the new infrastructure on University Avenue, and I was just stunned that I can do right hands on red. I mean, it was just incredible to me. I was like, wow, if you are not in a vehicle, this is not cool. It just surprised me.
This is Philo and Windsor, and this is how it compares. When you see a diagram, you can actually see the things a little bit better. But, you know, there could be an inaccuracy, things not to scale and so on. This driver was traveling eastbound, and then they...
She was looking at the gas price.
Exactly, yeah. And again, I don't think that this was covered at all in the paper, as most of these things
It
aren't.
was not.
Yeah.
She admitted she was distracted because she was looking at the gas price at the corner.
And you know, it's funny how some of these reports are a lot more candid than you're going to hear later in court. When they're talking to the police right after it happened, they still remember these things. There was a cell phone involved in the death at Vine in Maine that somehow never made it into as an issue, despite the fact the report did show that, you know, a text had been made and received immediately in between that, with the crash occurring in between. And the reports can be very candid and raise some issues. And so this is one that I was bringing up also, just to show the diagram, but also to mention the flashing yellow arrow. Whether the person doesn't say they were confused by the flashing yellow arrow, but they had that flashing yellow arrow, so they may have thought they could turn, but then they're looking at gas prices and they cut their turn way too sharp, ending up in the left turn lane instead of where they were supposed to be. If they were where they supposed to be, I suppose they wouldn't have hit the pedestrian, probably in this case.
I didn't even realize we had flashing yellows at Philo and Windsor.
I didn't either.
I've never seen a flashing yellow there.
This is February 11th of this year.
I was there today. I've never seen a flashing yellow at Philo and Windsor.
Hmm.
It said flashing yellow left turn arrow. I assume it's there, but that's in the report. Okay.
Okay, thanks, Audrey. Is that,
Yeah, let me just summarize then. It's upsetting to see those.
After yielding to.
So, evidence for the traffic commission, flashing yellow there, and then, and these are just ideas of what we might want to be looking at as we collect data. We have to make a table and collect data and make it in some way clear what seems to be our major problems for messaging. So some observations, 8 of 17 were hit in a crosswalk or bike path. This is 2021. At least 6 involved turning, 2 were minors. There were a couple where they just didn't see them and did a rear end, including the fatality on Main. And 2 pedestrians were hit in private parking lots but not ticketed. And a pedestrian and a cyclist hit in a driveway. I'm including the one on Lincoln as being in the driveway. There were 4 hit and runs, and those are really scary and sad. And the more you enforce, the more likely perhaps that you get a hit and run too. I don't know, the harsher they are. I haven't totaled how many were trucks, vans, and CUVs, but we do know that was a Dodge Ram truck for that fatality or the time of day. So we're trying to be able to communicate the true cost of the apparent convenience of the streets and culture designed for cars rather than people. So if anyone has any questions, I would be glad to write them down for when we go through this. We can take note of that.
okay, thanks, Audrey. And thanks for spending all the time going through the and getting the police reports and looking at the details.
And Audrey, I think like those photographs work really well, and I think really simplifying it. So when we're ready to kind of figure out how and when we want to present this information, I can help you with that.
I would recommend you double check that there's actually flashing yellow at Philo and Windsor.
Okay.
I bet there's an arrow. There's not an arrow. I swear there is. No?
Okay, so next we have announcements. When is your last meeting? You have one more month?
No, this is my last BPAC meeting. I'll be submitting my resignation to the mayor. In addition to being the president of Ride Illinois, some of you know I was elected to the National Board of the Sierra Club. So I am resigning from a lot of other activities because it's a big job. I'm spending the rest of this week attending the National Board meeting virtually because I couldn't get there and get back in time for a trip that we're making. So I think we're doing a lot of good work. I won't go away. I'll still be around. I'll be here with my interns next month to present the review of the bike plan And I know that Brianna has chosen as her capstone, working on getting people to apply to become bicycle-friendly businesses in Urbana and Champaign. So that's something that we can, support her in doing and let her keep you all up to date. So there's still that opportunity. I've relayed the information to MTD. They may have one of the staff who do bike and ped stuff put in an application, because I think the perspective of MTD here is helpful in the work that,
Yep.
that is done, because it's a major mode of transportation and not an easy one to understand in terms of how it works. So thank you all for your hard work. I've enjoyed serving with all of you.
Thank you.
Yeah, yeah, Bill, that's my question. I wanted to know if we were gonna acknowledge, Jeff served 6 years, and Cynthia, how many years have you served?
Oh, I don't know. I'll have to go look.
I know when I had joined BPAC, I'm gonna say the name wrong, Brandon Bowersox Johnson.
Yes,
Something.
yes.
He had this like fun, like,
Yes, he was the chair.
Susian name. But he got like a nice road sign, and he got a nice sending off. And I'm just wondering if we could do is it possible? I mean, does the city of Urbana do a nice sending off to thank these volunteers for their years
Well, I
of
do
service?
not need a road sign, thank you.
I can
Well,
imagine.
I think Brandon got a road sign because he was also leaving council.
Yes.
It was actually at BPAC, because it was I didn't go to council. It was at BPAC that it
And he
happened.
initiated the creation of BPAC, I think, was part of what was
Okay.
happening there, but.
It just seems to me it would be nice to thank and acknowledge these folks somehow, if that's a thing that we do. But thank you, Cynthia. Your work and help has been just invaluable. We are gonna
Thanks,
miss
Cynthia.
you so much, and we do expect you to listen in and show up and keep us in line.
Yeah, she's still volunteered to be sort of a source of interns, so she'll be around.
Who's gonna edit the minutes, Cynthia? Who? How?
And then tomorrow night is Rite of Silence, right? So it's at 7 o'clock tomorrow night, Rite of Silence at iHotel, if anybody is available. Any other announcements?
This guy's finger on the button.
Yep, I have a few. So the walkability audit data collection was completed in April, and my intern, who did a capstone for that project, analyzed the data. It came out at 76.2, which is very walkable for the university. Again, I can share more details about that at some other meeting. We also collected 2,000. Again, these are all perception-based deficiency reports.
Sarthak, I filled it out about 1,500 times.
Yeah, so we collected 2,000 data points for the whole campus as to what, including sidewalk maintenance issues, crosswalk issues, and all those ADA issues, and a lot of those things. So the next few months I'll be analyzing those, we'll be vetting those, and then possibly tying that up with the ADA transition plan supplement document that we have, and working towards improving the sidewalk conditions. Next thing, mode choice survey that was open for the whole month of April. I received about 620 responses, and again, I haven't analyzed it yet, but I will be doing that sometime this month, probably. If I have time, maybe next month. I don't know. This summer is my goal. I am working with Champaign County Bikes on updating the bike maps. We are going to host the online version on the FNS website. We already have a bike map, so we're trying to figure it out. It's still in early discussion. I'm just giving you an update. There's a discussion going on about that. This semester or this summer, I am hiring a high school student to help with the abandoned bicycles
Yay.
program. So we are going to tag the bicycles on campus, and so the student can join late or last week of May or probably first week of June. So that process will start then. We are not doing, from what I've heard from the Bike Center and the Bike Project, that we are not collaborating with Working Bikes this year. So the bicycles that are not claimed, they will be donated to the Bike Project and the Bike Center, and they will be refurbished and resold.
And you did a good job with, there was digital signage that went out across campus.
Oh, yeah.
And,
I love doing those.
do you? That's great. I put them up. The computer science students know all about it. They probably don't. But I was gonna say, they did a great job putting up these signs that said, with a picture of a bike in the clouds, that was like, if you don't leave your bike behind locked up, donate it to the Bike Project, which I thought was really smart.
Yeah.
So can your
yes.
intern work with the city of Urbana too and tag all of our dead bikes?
It's I don't think so. But
But what a
yeah.
great idea.
It could be, yeah. Sorry.
Could you we borrow the tools?
I'm going to use ArcGIS field maps for tagging and everything. You guys are more than welcome to tag, use the same function, if you want. That's totally fine. In the past month, we have installed 2 more eco counters. One at Green and Goodwin, the other one at Armory and 6th. Currently, we have 4 operating on campus. So Atlanta Union, Wright and Healy. And the 2 new one, Green and Goodwin and Armory and Wright. Armory and 6th. And I have another eco counter. I've requested to purchase 1 more, and I have requested more funding to purchase, because for the MCOR, we are required to monitor bicycle and pedestrian activity at 12 corridors, where the MCOR project was done. So hopefully we'll have these eco counters installed at each of those 12 corridors soon. I cannot say when.
Will we be able to see, is it one of those things where you walk,
Yes.
it's
You
exciting?
can see the data. You can see the data. I actually have a idea for an event where once we have all the 12, we can do collect all the, go and tag all the eco counters, ride your bicycle, do a run. There are 12 people at 12 locations, just hand out or whatever. Anyway, real quick, for bicycle registration, John already mentioned that the city of Urbana is hosting the bike registration system, or they're linking the university system with on the City of Urbana website. Later this week, I'm going to talk to the police department at City of Urbana to show them the back end of the Project 529 system with the university, and I'll give them access to that system also. Other than that, the city buildings said they are not going to hand out stickers, but they, Urbana Free Library is close by, and they are one of the locations. If not, then the UIPD, the public safety building. So these were the few things that I wanted to talk about.
Okay, thanks. With that, I don't see any other business, so this meeting is adjourned. Thank you.